Hey everybody, welcome back to the Wealth Advisory's Top Stocks. We're on to March 2024. As you may have noticed by our green attire, we're trying to bring a little bit of the luck of the Irish to this month's picks. We actually had a pretty decent month last month. We had a couple of losers, but we had some big winners. Albemarle popped up almost 30%. What was it? You had Viper Energy. That one was up a good double digits there. I think 13 or 14%. We just said. So we had some good ones that helped us outperform the averages, and we had some bad ones that we're gonna probably cut out this month. But hey, you can't win them all. We always say that. Anybody that tells you that they're right 100% of the time is either crazy or lying. We're neither of those, so I like to think that we're neither of those. I might be a little bit crazy, but it's the good kind of crazy.
Little of one, little of the other.
It's the good kind of crazy. So anyway, we had a decent month. Markets had a really interesting month. It was it reminded me of my time working with the military, right, where it was a lot of we called it hurry up and wait. Right, where the markets would, they'd be waiting. We need to see these big earnings. We need to see this economic data, and then it would come out, and they would just boom, hurry up and move up, and then, sort of wait, and you can really see it in the charts. It's like a step, like steps going up this month. NVIDIA put out blowout earnings showing that the AI bull market's alive and well. The Fed's preferred inflation gauge, the PCE deflator, came out earlier this week or last week when you're watching it, and that was in line. And while it did show that things are heating up a little bit, that was expected. And it didn't heat up more than anybody expected. So the algorithms and traders took that as a good sign. Rate cuts are still on the table. They're betting for June. So the markets went up, and we've hit some new records. The NASDAQ closed at a new all-time high. That's pretty exciting. S&P 500 hit the millennial mark and then went on to close a new century at 5,100. I mean, it's
a good time to be an investor all of a sudden.
It really is, for a lot of the people who were naysayers at the beginning of the year saying we had run up too much. I really hope that you didn't listen to them and you took our advice and stayed in the market and continued to buy because, we're up. We're up really good. And I think we're going to continue to be up. The trend... The trend is higher, and that's the path of least resistance. So, we're bullish, and we think you should be bullish. And we've got a really good top 10 list for you this month. Now, as usual, we're going to run through the first 4 stocks, and then we're going to cut it off for those of you who are watching on YouTube. We provide this as a service for our paying subscribers, so it wouldn't be fair for us to give out everything for free since they've already paid for access. But we would love to have you join the newsletter. The community of the Wealth Advisory, it's a great community. You get a whole lot more than just the top 10 picks. You get monthly recommendations. We keep you updated on all the positions in our model portfolio. You get access to all the research we've ever done and all the research we're ever going to do. I mean, it's a really good deal, and we'll put a link to a discounted membership in the description below the video. If you'd like to join us, we'd love to have you. We highly recommend it. I think the subscription pays for itself pretty quickly. Even with just the top 10 gains, and then all of the other stuff you get is just sort of a bonus, a cherry on top there. Anyway, if you don't want to join us, we won't hold it against you. We'll continue to put these out. All we ask is that you give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell to make sure that you're notified when we post new content. And so with that, let's get to the top 10.
Let's kick it off.
All right, and I will kick it off with actually my top performer from last month and my first pick this month, Albemarle. Ticker symbol is ALB. And Albemarle is the world's biggest lithium producer, basically. And so it had a volatile month, right? It finished up, but it fell mid-month pretty hard because it and all of the other big lithium producers out there are basically cutting their demand forecast, saying like, hey, we thought that the world was going to want tons of lithium, well, hundreds of tons of lithium, and it seems it only wants, like tens of tons of lithium. It still wants a lot of lithium, but not as much as we thought, so, we're cutting our demand forecast. But the truth of the whole matter is, because you see these headlines saying like, oh, EV adoption isn't doing what people thought it was going to, and they're just not selling cars, and Apple's not going to make its electric vehicle. Well, Apple's not a car company, so that's probably a smart move by Apple. They probably should have come to this conclusion a few years earlier so they hadn't spent so much money trying to upsize an iPhone and put tires on it. But you see, EV adoption is still gaining steam. That is the truth. The numbers show that it's growing. It's just growing at a slower pace than we expected. So from 2020 to 2021, numbers of EVs grew by around 50%. From 2022 to 2023, they still grew, but only by about 25% or so. So that's still really strong growth. It's going to lead to strong demand in the future. It's just not as strong as everybody was expecting, and those announcements really caught investors off guard. It was a shock. They oversold the stocks, and with Albemarle down around 50% from its 2022 peak, I see a lot of growth ahead. There's going to be strong demand for lithium. These prices are going to start coming back up, and we all need to be invested in this one. So Albemarle is going to be my first pick this month.
Got it.
And with that, I'll pass it off to Mr. Simpkins here.
All right. So we've got, next up is General Dynamics, another one of my favorite defense contractors.
Great
GD,
company.
a very easy one. I like General Dynamics because it's on a bit of a hot streak here. It's actually up 10% since late January, and it was really helped out by a strong earnings report. Fourth quarter revenue was up 7.5% to $12 billion. Full year revenue up 7.3% to $42 billion. Fourth quarter net earnings $1 billion, or $3.64 a share. Full year net earnings $3 billion, a little over $12 a share. And they just signed a $1.3 billion deal with Austria to send combat vehicles over. So that's Austria gearing up for wars in Europe, which, I don't always get a chance to talk about some of the larger context to this stuff, but right now, NATO's spending is poised to top $1 trillion, okay? A lot of that is obviously going to be the United States, as we've got about an $800+ billion defense budget, but our allies in Europe are spending $380 billion this year, on track to. That is the most they've spent, even going back more than they spent in 1989. All right, so when you see, these headlines about Ukraine and about Russia and about what's going on over there, this is what it's about. This is where that defense money is coming from and going. Even a country as small as Austria is out here spending $1 billion+ on tactical vehicles that it wouldn't otherwise need if Russia hadn't evolved into such a threat. Also, we've seen a little bit more autonomy in Europe in terms of separating themselves and not just relying on the United States to defend them, because they realize that might not be the case depending on how the election turns out later in November, that they might have to really be responsible for their own security. So they're spending a lot more on defense. You're seeing that now. We see that with this deal in Europe with General Dynamics Europe division. We have huge defense outlays in the United States. That's not going to change. Going up across the board. It's translating into earnings, and you're seeing now the bookings too. So that's why I've got General Dynamics here, number 9 overall. Is that this one? There we go, clear canvas.
I like it. I think that's a good one.
Yeah,
that's really impressive. Back to 1989.
Its spending is the highest.
The Soviet Union was still around back then.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
before the collapse of the Soviet Union, we've now eclipsed that spending in Europe.
That's impressive, and they've continued to say that they're going to continue to build on that too.
Absolutely. The trend is going up. It's continuing
going up, and my next pick sort of plays on that a little bit. Not so much in Europe, but here in the U.S. because I have Leidos, which is one of my favorite contractors. Its ticker is LDOS. Leidos. Just ignore that little caret thing on top of the L. And so anyway, Leidos had a great month in February. I probably should have recommended it last month, and I didn't. It was up over 13%. A lot of that came after reporting just outstanding Q4 earnings and full-year guidance partway through the month. So this is the exciting thing, is the IT division is driving the company's fastest revenue growth in history, and this is where the company had been, basically spending a lot of money to grow. They weren't so much of an IT contractor. They, and they've driven this growth, and now IT, like this division that basically didn't exist when we first invested in them back in the late 2010s. It's now driving the fastest revenue growth in history. The company just got a new $249 million firm fixed price contract with Army Contracting Command at my former home base, Aberdeen Proving Ground. That's where it was hurry up and wait. So they're going to hurry up and spend $249 million with Leidos, and that, I think, should help fuel even more fast revenue growth. So I think that we need to be invested in that one, and that's going to be my next pick this month. Overall, our number 8, Leidos, LDOS. There we go. And next up, finishing out the first four.
And you'll see in light of what I just talked about, we're heavy in defense in the early goings here, but again, for good reason, given the spending outlays and what we've seen And on top, and this one I wanted to retain because I did talk about it last month. And when I talked about it last month, we talked about $1 billion plus charge it took on the B-21 stealth bomber program, and how its stock took a huge hit. And I said, buy it because it's going to recover from that. And that's exactly what we saw. The stock's up 3% over the past month. It's up 6% since bottoming out in January after making that announcement. It's recovered and then some. All right, the stock's picked back up. And when you look at a company like Northrop Grumman, it's not a surprise because they are working on some really, really sophisticated and expensive programs, not the least of which is they're developing the Sentinel IBM, which is going to replace the Minuteman. Those are the intercontinental ballistic missiles that we have in underground silos around our country, basically part of our nuclear deterrent, and interceptors as well. And that's a huge project for them. And then they just this week inked a huge deal with Viasat. And what they're going to do is put us a whole series of broadband satellites out in space to connect our ground forces, ground vehicles, with our jets and bombers. So, and that's been a huge project basically for the Pentagon over the past several years, is linking all of our vehicles and all of our troops and everything in one big cloud where the information is shared and everybody can access it, and it is constantly updating, and it's all that information is shared in almost one giant collective brain. So when you look at these projects, these are massive projects. These are huge undertakings. They require a lot of partners like Viasat and numerous others to get all this stuff done. And so when you see a company like Northrop Grumman suffer a setback because of a random charge on a bomber program, that's when you want to get in. And that's what we did. It's up. I think it's got a lot of momentum behind it. It's going to keep going up. So that's why I retained Northrop Grumman here.
I like it. I think
it's
that's great.
Sticking around.
I can't help but remember back to when I was a kid and I used to watch the X-Men movies, and the Sentinel program was what ended up hunting the mutants, wasn't it? It tells you a little bit about me and who I was as a kid, so, you know.
A lot of people like the X-Men. I wasn't a kid. I watched the Ninja Turtles.
Okay, I love the Ninja Turtles,
which
too.
We'll,
I also
we'll
love
circle
pizza.
back on later.
Okay, excellent. A little foreshadowing. For now, though, let's go ahead and do our little recap here, and then we're going to end things for those of you watching on YouTube. We're going to get to the next 6 for those of you watching who remembers the Wealth Advisory community. So, going through our recap, first is my number 5 pick, our number 10 pick, Albemarle Corporation. Lithium demand has not been what they expected it to be, but it is still growing. Markets don't seem to appreciate the fact that it's still growing, and they're selling the stock like it's shrinking. And I want us to buy in because, you know, that demand's growing, and that's going to lead to bigger profits for Albemarle, which is going to lead to a higher share price for us. Next up, number 9. Jason's number 5.
Yeah,
pick.
General Dynamics. Like I said, we saw it in the earnings already. The defense spending worldwide, Europe, United States, having an effect. But now we're also seeing, I mean, we just had a situation where Vladimir Putin assassinated his chief political rival yet again. And so the clouds over Europe continue to darken. And, you know, like I said, there's a situation right now, you know, not just with Ukraine in terms of the United States, but, you know, holding up aid and not, you know, basically kind of doing what we traditionally do, which is back them up. Russia's making a lot of gains there. Europe's a little bit even more shook than it was 3 years ago when Russia first invaded. And that's why you're seeing countries like Austria invest over $1 billion in tactical vehicles. That's just one of many deals that you're seeing coming out of Europe right now, because as I said, our European allies are on track to spend at least $380 billion this year on weapons.
It's a lot of money. That is a lot of money there. Coming in at number 8, another defense contractor, Leidos Holdings. This one, you know, more of a U.S.-based one, more of a U.S.-focused one, but we've got that huge, you know, $800 billion and growing defense budget. And Leidos has its new IT department, which it's been building for the past several years, and that is now leading revenue growth, the fastest revenue growth in history. It just signed a $250 million contract with the U.S. Army. It's a firm fixed-price contract, too, so that is basically money in the bank. And I think everybody should own this one. Next and last for this segment.
Northrop Grumman. This is just a case where buying the dip worked. You know, a 6% move for a company as big as Northrop is a big move in 1 month when you're talking about that. So
Billions of dollars there.
And it tells you exactly how, you know, the larger investing world is viewing this company and the trends and what we're seeing. And like I said, when you look at some of the projects it's working on, whether it's ICBMs, our domestic missile shield, or putting satellites in orbit to connect everything in this massive cloud that the Pentagon wants to build, they're maybe one of the most trusted, if not the trusted partner that the Pentagon has. So you like the direction Northrop's going, and you know it's probably just going to keep going on.
All right, and there you have it. Those are our first four, 10 through 7. And now, like I said, we're going to cut this off for those of you watching on YouTube. If you would like access to the next 6, click the link in the description below the video. You'll get access to a discounted membership, which will get you not only the top 10, but access to everything else that a membership with the Wealth Advisory brings with it, which I think is well worth the cost that we're asking. But if you decide that you don't want to join us, like I always say, we won't hold it against you, and we'll keep putting these videos out as long as you want to watch them. We just ask that you subscribe to the channel, give us a thumbs up, hit the bell to make sure you get notified when we post new content, and you know, drop us a comment here and there. You know, if you have opposing points of view, questions, whatever, we love to hear them. So we'd love to hear from you. And until next month, thanks for watching. We'll see you again.